Get off of me, Domo. I hate that guy. I don't really hate him, but he just wants to be in all the videos and he can't. I mean, you saw what happened with Tater Jr. last week. I mean, what a mess. 7th and 8th graders, welcome to History with Mr. E. If you don't know me by now, I am your history teacher, and I have been all year long. I also have really great hair. So, if anybody wants to send any compliments my way, just find my email and lavish it up. Today we're going to be talking about the home front during World War II. That is our Second World War, and hence the name. So let's get down to it. We're at war. After Pearl Harbor, we declared war on Japan, and shortly thereafter we declared war on Germany and Italy. So how do you have a war? How do you have a war? Well, first you supply yourself and build an army. American factories began to produce whole scale. They were outproducing Germany and Japan in ways you could never imagine. Even after we knew we were going to win the war, we continued to produce weapons of our warfare. It's important to America that we were able to fight on no matter what. In the desert, you used to be able to find entire, just massive patches of land filled with old tanks, old jeeps, old airplanes that had been discarded once the war had ended. We had enough to continue fighting for years and years after the war because American industry is that strong. Henry Ford stopped some of his production lines, and began building the B-2 Liberator bomber. And they produced one plane an hour. And by 1943, 86,000 planes a year were being produced by the Ford factory. That's the B-2 Liberator bomber. Henry Kaiser helped to build Liberty ships and supply ships. Women went to work. The women had an icon that was up on all the propaganda posters showing the strength of American females during the war. It was a woman holding her muscle with a bandana on, showing that women were ready and willing to go to war for America, the war effort, not only by joining the military, but also by just going to factories and working. Her name was Rosie the Riveter, and this is her picture of her. Rosie the Riveter. And it showed that, and it helped to add strength to our war efforts, to show that the women of our country, and not only the men, were going to war. We also recruited 350,000 women into our military, and the Women's Army Corps called the WWIIs, and the Women's Navy called the WWIIs. Women also served as test pilots and doctors and nurses during the war. And those are just the ones that were in the military. I mean, there was so much that women did to strengthen America during this war, to send aid, to build our forces. We began to grow victory gardens. That's our own gardens, and at every house that could grow one. So that farmers, our nation's farmers, could supply troops. They didn't have to worry about selling their as much stuff here in America. We had ration books, which allowed us to buy certain amounts of things each week. And that they weren't big amounts. Sorry, I'm trying to open up a file here. They weren't big amounts, but they were enough that Americans could still have some of the basic, nice things. But we rationed everything from tires to sugar to meat and to other goods. You were only allowed to have for your family 3 gallons of gas and 2 pounds of meat a week. So you had to learn how to live, smaller. Um, I remember seeing a cookbook called the Meat Stretcher Cookbook. Now this was from the 70s, not during the war era, but it went with the idea that you could stretch, your hamburger that would normally serve 2 people to serve maybe 5 or 6 people, just by um, you know doing things like adding some oats or some rice to the meat. Um, and we had to learn these things, or we were going to run out of it on the first day and spend the next 6 days eating those rice and oats. Anyhow, we ran scrap drives for tin foil, for kitchen fat that we could use as lubricant, for cans that we could use the metal from, for paper that could be recycled, for rubber that could be recycled, for scrap iron that could be recycled and even forged into steel. All these things were needed for the war effort because that's the only thing that we could dwell on at this time, because the war was massive. We also had war bonds, which were selling or buying bonds from the government, paying the government money, and then they would pay us back with interest later. And you could even volunteer for jobs for the war. You could be an air warden, which watched for air attacks. You could be a policeman or a fireman. You could be a plane or a sub spotter. Or you could assist in a hospital like a candy striper. Or help draw blood, or help do physicals for ingoing soldiers. There were lots and lots of things that you could volunteer for if you weren't over fighting the war or hadn't gotten drafted yet. We also had to do air raid drills in case we were being raided. We had to know what to do when that happened. We had blackouts. After a certain hour, everybody had to turn their lights out so that no planes that were going to bomb us could see well enough to do so. And we, of course, had massive blood drives. Now, if you're 18, and I don't know about kids your age, but the day and age that we're living in now, a blood drive is a good way to help out. I'm going to try to donate blood sometime this week because it's needed and because I have plenty of it. So I don't know about kids your age. I don't know about you, if you have to be 18 or not. But if you think you want to help out with something like that, talk to your folks for a few minutes and see what they say. I'll see you later.